You've seen that movie sort of effect where the film flares out or burns out because the film's stuck there. Well, that's what happens to us. But these little sprocket holes are self-discipline. And you've got to learn the process of self-discipline, because without self-discipline, you are never going to see the journey. You're not going to see it through. So I get people to understand that. They go, right, okay, I've accepted responsibility and I've got all these new ideas in my head and now I've got a plan, I'm shaping up. And then they get stuck. They just go round and round and round in a circle. And this is what I call the circle of intoxicating intention.
Today, my guest today is Julian Mather, former Army sniper, ABC cameraman, magician and YouTube star. Plus he's an author, and today he's known as the Courage Guy. Julian's also an expert in career strategy, and we want to welcome him to Leading the Leader podcast. Hi, Julian. How are you going?
Hey, Paul. Great to be here. Happy to answer any questions you throw my way. Let's go.
Okay, mate. That's quite a resume. Let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us a little bit how your past has got you to where you got today.
Well, I was passionate when I was at school. Look, I always say I did really well at school if you don't count learning. So ended up basically wagging most of my year 12 at school, and I took myself to the State Library in Brisbane where I live, and I studied every book on photojournalism that I could. And I learnt two things. One, I read between the lines, and I sort of gathered that photojournalism was not going to happen in Brisbane, that I had to travel the world, because that seemed to be where all the pictures, were coming from. And I had to, set myself a plan to get out of Brisbane, and I didn't really know how I was going to do this as a, young and dumb sort of 18, 19-year-old. And I ended up walking down the street one day, and there was a poster on a bus shelter. And it was an army recruiting poster, and it had these soldiers walking through a pine forest. Now, that seemed exotic. I mean, I was used to eucalypt trees. I was a bit of an outdoorsy guy. But pine trees, that seemed exotic. And I thought, that's my path to the world. So I went in, and they said, sign on the dotted line. And I did, and that's when the yelling started. And they basically, ended up in the infantry in the army. And, I sort of had this plan. I was going to be a photographer in the army. And they said, they didn't tell you that, did they? And so I spent about a year in the regular infantry and thought, look, this isn't for me. And I needed to find somewhere else, somewhere I could indulge my antisocial behaviours. And I found out that I was a relatively good shot. And I went in the Army sniper program, and that was a really tough gig to get through, but I got through and ended up doing a couple of years as an Army sniper. But it was not what I wanted to do. I was literally looking through the wrong lens. But, I learned a ton of stuff as a sniper, and probably the biggest thing, they used to say, have you got your rifle? Check. Have you got your radio? Check. Have you got your mirror? Check. We used to start with this little mirror. It was like a little polished steel mirror. And every day you'd start and you'd look into it and you say this little rhyme. You go, mirror, mirror in the bush, who's the most handsome bloke in this push? You are, Julian, without a doubt. Thank you, mirror. Roger out. But that was like the fun bit. But the real bit, because I used to say, if you've got any problems, ask the man in the mirror. He'll sort all your problems for you. And it's really when I started to learn about personal responsibility, and it really resonated with me. But after a couple of years, look, I just decided, this was not my future. And I was looking literally through the wrong lens, through the sniper scope, and wanted a more broader, wide-angle view on the world, and, really wanted to get back to photojournalism. So, got out and moved around a bit for a year or so, and then finally got a cadetship at ABC TV. And it was just wonderful. And they don't offer these sort of things anymore. They gave me 3 years of this amazing training. They trained me in all facets of TV, all facets of radio. They used to do things like put me with a symphony orchestra and teach me how to read a music score in case one day, I needed to direct a symphony orchestra. But really what I wanted to do was do camera, and I got on the road doing exactly what I wanted to do, and that was be a documentary cameraman. And I did that for 25 years. And
you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, well, the thing was that when, as a cameraman, a lot of it is, quite freaking slow and boring, but every month something of interest happens. If you do that for 25 years and you're traveling around, you end up with a bucket load of stories to be able to tell. And look, the opportunity came along, and this really frustrates a lot of people who've worked a long time to get a book published, and can't get it published. But I literally fell into having this book. I was literally going through my notes, because I used to diarise. I've got a terrible memory, so I used to diarise all my notes. And I was going through them one quiet time, and the phone rang, and it was HarperCollins saying they were after someone else who had pitched an idea about an anthology of cameraman stories. And I said, "Oh, look, this person's overseas. What's this? What are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, it'd make a good book." I said, "It's funny you should ring right now, because I'm going through all my notes. I could write 2 books out of this." Nothing happened. About 3 months later, they rang up and said, "We want you to start." And I didn't even know who it was on the phone. I didn't even remember the conversation. And out of that, I ended up writing the second best job in the world.
Bravo. You seem to be a guy that takes the opportunities.
Yeah. It's opportunity is to me, it's almost everything. I literally. You got to measure your life by some sort of metric of success, and for a lot of my life, like a lot of people, I measured it by money and status, and quite often I've found myself falling short. And then when I changed, and this was probably 5-6 years ago, I just said that's not my metric anymore. My metric of success is lack of regret. And I immediately went to being the richest person in the room. I can literally go in any situation and just feel like I'm the richest person in the room, if based on that metric, because I, hand on my heart, do not regret anything I've ever done. Bar, sometimes I should have just shut my mouth when I said some hurtful things to people. But apart from those sort of things, I've never regretted any of the opportunities that I've taken, because a lot of them haven't played out. A lot of them haven't gone my way, but I've learnt and I've built upon that. I can't think of any opportunity that I haven't just gone, I'm going to stretch myself, and I'm going to give this a shot and see where it takes me.
Julian, just unpack that a little bit, because people sort of play a lot of lip service to not having a regret, but what does it actually mean to you? What does it actually mean to not have a regret?
Well, okay. Every day I wake up, I'm subject to these 4 forces, and these 4 forces are to me as real as gravity. I've got ignorance, which I feel holds me down, and I've got awareness, which lifts me up, and I've got resistance, which holds me back, and then I've got discipline, which propels me forward. And I play this, tug of war between, somewhere between these 4 forces. And I know that if I give in to resistance and ignorance, I'm going to lead what I call a shackled life. And you probably know people yourself, or you've felt like this at times in your life, where you want to go ahead and do something that's literally like you got a chain on your leg, and you go for something, but the chain snaps.
Yep.
And you just can't, and you don't know what's going on, and that's quite often that you just don't know what you don't know, and you're giving into this feeling of resistance, which most people never identify what this feeling is. And that's one incredibly important thing, people need to do, is identify what resistance feels like, because we get it all the time, but we just don't acknowledge it. And if you acknowledge it, you take it as a signal that it's either means something very dangerous is going to happen, or potentially a lot of opportunity is going to happen, but that's very scary. And so it's a really good signal. So when I identify this, I try to push myself towards being more aware and, taking more discipline, using more discipline. And that shoots me up into what I call my liberated life. Because, I can live in the comfortable life. It's we can all semi-rest on our laurels, but I want to push into the liberated life, because that's where all the exciting things have happened for me. And one of the things as a documentary cameraman, I say that I studied in the world's greatest anthropological lab. I got to study all levels of society, from prince to pauper. And the biggest thing that I got from meeting all these successful people, again, by any metric you want to use, successful people just surprised me. They were just ordinary people. I was continually surprised, and all they did was just do more than other people. They stayed the course. So I would say successful people are extraordinary people are ordinary people who do extra. And so then that's just that's fantastic for me, because I'm about the most ordinary bloke there is there. So I've just learned from that, if I can stay the course, then a lot of these opportunities are going to come to fruition. But what helps me stay the course is digging into my courage. And that's where I get this idea of the courage guy. We have all this unused courage that we're not called upon to use these days. And courage is not like battlefield courage. Courage is just this ability to face difficulty. And if you can face difficulty every day, just in small measure, and I always say that all that is a little knot in your stomach. You know, when you want to do something and it's like a little bit challenging and you get that feeling in your stomach, you know, that twisty feeling in your stomach. I just say that's the new you in there. It's like literally, it's like aliens. It's the new you wanting to, it's twisting and turning, ready to burst out. And if that feeling is inside of me, I know that this is worthy of me pursuing. And to me, it's just the courage to be uncomfortable. If you can be a little bit uncomfortable and learn to live with that, you'll stay the distance. And just based upon my experience and literally hundreds, if not thousands of successful people that I've come across, the majority of them have done the same thing.
It's an enormous comment. I love the new you comment. Thank you for that. So relate the courage thing and the knots in the stomach to fear. You may have felt fear on the battlefield, I'm not sure, but you face fear very well, it seems.
No, let's be clear. I never saw any active service at all. I lived, and thank goodness. I mean, when I was young and dumb and stupid, it was all a bit gung ho and like, oh, why isn't there a war on? But with age and maturity, it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Just judging by all the problems people bring back from the battlefield. But fear. I mean, fear is just fear. Fear is a reaction. And it's not, without thinking through things. We just come across a situation and it scares us in some way, because opportunity, I always say that opportunity is in a cave. It's the cave of opportunity. And the treasure we seek is in the cave we fear to go. Yeah. The treasure we seek is in the cave we fear to go. Yep. Always. And so when if you spend time and you unpack most of the times that things scare you, that you are fearful of things, you realize if you break them down into their component parts, it's quite manageable. I learnt this from, there's a guy called Glenn Singleman. He is a filmmaker and he holds a world record for base jumping, from jumping off the highest cliff in the world. Okay. When he was in his base jumping, I did some filming with him many decades ago, and he got into corporate speaking. And his wife now, Heather Swan, used to be in the speaking agency, and sometimes she used to go along and stage manage these talks. And he used to say during his talks, talking about base jumping off the top of the highest cliff in the world, really it's just about managing fear. He said if you can stand on like a wooden fruit box and jump off and pull a handkerchief out of your pocket at the same time you jump, you have all the technical wherewithal to jump off the highest cliff in the world and base jump it. What you need to do is just manage that fear and break it down into its component parts. His wife, Heather, said to him, you say this to audiences all the time, but is it real? Is it true? Can you do that? And so he said, well, how about I teach you? Now, Heather had never done anything adventurous or outdoorsy at that stage. Anyway, over a period of years and breaking it down to its component parts, Heather and Glenn have now set many world records with base jumping. So it is achievable, but it takes time and it takes application.
Okay, so I'm going to segue into my personal fear, and I think we've discussed this about public speaking. So I'm figuring I'm on that path, and that's the cave where the treasure for me lies. So how can you, could you give us a little bit of advice there on fear of public speaking? And I know you have a fantastic phrase, which I will jump in and say right now, and I loved it. It was fixed nervous with service. And
it is fixed nervous with service, yeah. And I'll pay full credit to Matt Church for that. I heard it from him, and it's just such a wonderful saying. It sums it up. Look, with public speaking, there is so much misunderstanding of what is going on out there. So where fixed nervous with service comes from, it's just that when we go up and speak, whether it's on video, whether it's in front of an audience, whether you're standing up and telling a joke in front of a group of friends, whether you're standing in a boardroom addressing 20 people, we think it's all about us. And we're worried about what we say, about how we look, about how our accent sounds. Are people going to criticize us? Are people going to ask questions which we can't answer? And all this is focused around us. And when you're in that position, it's almost impossible to get out of. I mean, you will stand there and you will give the presentation and you will feel the blood beat in your ears. You will feel your mouth go dry and your palms start to go sweaty. You'll do all that and you'll get through it. And you'll give one of the, they always say there's 3 speeches that you give. There's the one that you prepare. There's the one that you give, and then there's the one that you give on the way home in the car when you get to review it all. And, whether that's, it's the review, and you'll go afterwards, you go, oh, if only I said this, and if I'd only have, I'd done that. But the thing is, if you take you out of the equation and just go, how can I actually help people? What am I actually doing here? How can I be of service to other people? And once you get into that mindset, and this is true, I've heard people say, oh yeah, look, I've heard, that said before, but it is true. It is true. And this takes time. You're not going to do this overnight. But when you get into this mindset, you get you out of the picture, and it's just amazing how fast that you'll improve.
Okay, so give us some specific examples of when you're dealing with people, when your clients, and in that respect, what do they want from you? And what do you give them in return?
So number one thing, that if you seriously want to get better at public speaking, is go and join Toastmasters. And I'll tell you why. There are 2 places in the world that I've seen, in my experience, people actually change in front of my eyes. One was when I was in the army. I saw boys go in and come out as men. Actually saw it. And the other place is Toastmasters. I have seen people come in with no confidence, really wanting to improve themselves, and stay over a period of time, and I'm talking over a couple of years, and turn into people who can confidently own their position on the stage, whether that's in front of the room, actually in front of an auditorium. They can own that position. And that takes time, because you cannot go along to a course, like there's plenty of public speaking courses for corporate work. It goes, come along for an afternoon or a day workshop and we'll teach you public speaking. No, you can't do that. It takes time. And the reason Toastmasters is so good is that I don't know anywhere else you can find an audience on a regular basis. And not is it just an audience, it's also a very supportive audience, because you've got people who, everyone at Toastmasters is there for the same reason, and that's they want self-improvement in some form. And they've all come in the beginning of their journey, and they're in some stage along their journey, and everyone wants everyone else to succeed. So the number one thing I say is join Toastmasters, because it's the same as saying I want to learn to swim, but I'm going to learn to swim reading a book, or I want to learn to fly a plane and I'll do an online course. You can't. The only way that you can do it is actually jump in and do it. And bit by bit, you're going to find a lot of your assumptions were incorrect. Okay, what sort of assumptions? A lot of people fear audiences. They fear the audience is hostile, that somehow they want the audience somehow wants them to fail. And it's actually not true. When you understand psychology of audiences, when an audience comes along, we're all busy people. And if you're speaking, whether it be for 15 minutes or half an hour, people want you to be good. And they want you to be good because it means that they don't have to think for that 15 minutes or half an hour. So if you can go in and within the first, 20 or 30 seconds, just establish that you're a person who sort of knows what you're talking about and you're sort of humble. You don't have to be great at this, but that you're in control. That they go, oh, you mean I don't have to think? They hand control over to you. That's all an audience really wants. And, look, as long as you don't bomb out, big time, and even if you do, here's the next thing about audiences. They don't care about you. They just don't. We all think that if we stuff it up when we're speaking, that everyone's going to be talking about us. Nope. As soon as they leave that venue, they flip on their phone and they see the message that the kids have to be picked up for school. They remember they're meant to pick up something on the way home from work. There's all these messages. Life takes over and gets back in the way. And in fact, you're not important at all. And so if you can get over these assumptions, and you get over these by taking any opportunity you can to speak. I mean, you don't get on stage. You don't get in front of a room full of people. You don't get at the end of a table and just immediately become a good speaker. You have to put yourself through it. But again, that just takes that courage to live with a little bit of discomfort, because that's all it is. I mean, it's not, when we talk about courage, none of this is painful. Painful is losing someone in your family. I mean, that's just, we'll keep this in perspective. That really hurts. But standing up and just being uncomfortable for a few minutes, a few knots in your stomach, that's not really uncomfortable. That's just discomfort.
Let's talk about your courage compass. And that's quite a thing you do. Which I'm sure applies to legally type things. I'm interested in. So what is the Courage Compass?
Well, the Courage Compass is, so what happens is we get pushed out of school when we're 17 years old. We get a pat on the back and a good luck, and that's it for 5 decades of a working career. And so there's so much change coming up now with, we're coming into the 4th Industrial Revolution. And one of the...
Excuse me, Julian, what is that? What is the 4th Industrial Revolution?
We came out of the fields, for most of, let's as a starting point, let's just say the Middle Ages. We came out of an agrarian society. We lived in small communities. We either, worked in the fields. We maybe had a cottage industry, which was literally in our cottage, and we made some shoes and we went and traded them with the bloke who made some bread. And then in the late 1700s, they invented the steam engine, and all of a sudden you could have this big machine with a big long shaft that ran down the centre, and off that shaft they could put a number of belts and a number of stations, and all of a sudden you could scale up making shoes, or you could scale up making other things. But the problem was that we'd come out of the fields and nobody had the skills or the discipline to do this. And so they invented our education system, which, we all sat in nice rows and there was a teacher at the front. And we all learned that there was either a right way or a wrong way to do this. And then if you didn't get the right way, straight away, they reprocessed you and put you back in the system for another year until you popped out a good worker. And that's lasted really, really well up until then the second industrial revolution was when electricity was invented. And then the third industrial revolution was essentially the digital age and the information age. And now we're into the fourth industrial revolution, which is big data. So we have this amazing amount of data that we can use, and we have these quantum computers that can process it and spit out these amazing insights and answers that basically humans wouldn't be able to do unless we were given an awful long time to do it. So change is coming very, very quickly. So one of the hallmarks of the fourth industrial revolution is going to be constant change. And so, like I said, we get pushed out of school with no strategy to take your career through life. If something untoward happens in your work and you want to change, a lot of people don't know how to adjust to that. Or if you see something different, if you see opportunity and you want to switch, you don't have a strategy to get there because we have never been taught. I've always intuitively known this. I mean, I've had different careers as, an army sniper and a documentary cameraman and a magician, and I went into running an online business, and I now speak and write and educate people. I've intuitively known how to do this, and what the Courage Compass is the process that I've used, and over the last couple of years, I've sat down and I've looked at the research to back up my intuition. And it is a process that when I teach to people, if they see opportunity, it gives them a pathway to follow to that opportunity. And essentially it starts off with, because people feel powerless, you don't believe in yourself, you don't think you're good enough, and you don't know what to do. And it works on these three pillars of what you believe in your heart, what you think in your head, and what you can do with your hands and your feet. And it takes you on a process and a path that uses courage along the way, and courage is the engine that drives you. And you work out where your motivation comes from, you work out where your confidence comes from, you work on your attitude, and you finally get to the opportunity. So any time that you're lost, because I call it the compass because it always points to opportunity. Any time that you want to make change and you're feeling lost, you can look on this courage compass and you can basically find out where you're stuck. And then there's a whole series of processes you can use to get, to keep going forward.
Yeah, we're very much in the world of disruption too. Would you agree?
Yeah, and whether I suppose that's been a big word of the past decade. It's and look, there's more and more of that coming, but there's just constant change. And when people see change coming, they get confused and they get fearful of it because, again, we're never taught how to really deal with this. And this is particularly difficult at the moment because we have what I call, we're living in the time of the great discouragement. Courage used to be a thing it was a story. It's a story of courage, which is a story of the ability to overcome difficulty. And that used to be passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter, from priest to congregation, from uncles to all the kids in the village. And here we are in the global village. And where are the wise storytellers? Well, they've been replaced by this constant 24/7 message that tells us there's external solutions to our internal problems. So if you're overweight, take a pill for that. If she doesn't love you, just buy her a bigger ring. If you're injured, someone's got to pay for that. And what we've done is we've slipped into the habit of outsourcing personal responsibility. So this gets back to that personal responsibility that I learned as an army sniper. And outsourcing our responsibility is hurting us. And it's just this time of what I call the great discouragement. We're being discouraged from taking the action that we need to do to get to that opportunity.
Julian, this is a tricky question, I suppose, because it seems to me there are a lot of people out there giving a lot of advice. Yeah? I must say that your advice has resonated really strongly with me, and thank you for that. But without dissing anyone, it seems to me there's a lot of advice out there. So I'd like to know exactly, if I may, how you deal with the problems when you're speaking. What do you do? What steps do you take? Again, and relate it, if you would, to people whom you help. How do you help them with their specific problems?
Boy, that's very varied. I was just doing a coaching session about an hour ago with a person who wanted to get out of their current working profession and wanted to take up and follow through with a passion that they had. I won't give specifics on them. I don't want to identify them. Look, that's just really broad because people come. I mean, what people come to me for is that they are in a position at the moment where they feel stuck and they want to. They have a dream or a passion that they want to follow, because that's what I've done all my life. I'm the obsessional professional. I mean, I've always turned my obsession into my profession, and which is anywhere along where people feel stuck along the courage compass process. Because some people won't accept responsibility. So some people just coming to me and they go, it's everyone else's fault. And they're the only ones that can't see that they're blaming everyone else for their situation. Now, what happens to you out there in the world is not your fault, but how you react to that is. And, I always do it. I just put their phone, down on the table and we just look at their phone. And I go, well, that's your career. Let's just look at it. And it's not going to move anywhere. I mean, you're the only person who can start this process moving. So the first point is just getting people to own up and accept responsibility. And then they go, oh, right, okay, I got that now, I got it now. And then they give me a million reasons why they can't do it. And they say that I'm not good enough to do it. And that's why then you've got to get them into banishing assumptions. Because we are products of our environment, we're products of our parents. A lot of us had an experience where we first went to work and on our first tea break, we were taken into the tea room by a couple of the old timers and they'd pat you on the back and go, listen, son, this is how the world works. And they'd give you these ideas and they sort of served you well for most of your life and you don't question them, but they're actually wrong. So a lot of it is then, okay, let's look at what these ideas you got in your head. And let's start to unpack those and put some new ideas in there. And they go, right, okay, I got that. And now they go, okay, but now I don't know what to do. All right, well then let's break this down. And the first thing I do is I start people with the 1852 rule, which is there's everything I look at is long term. Is 5 years and everything now is short term, 30 days to this, 21, 7 easy steps to this, and that just doesn't work. And so you got to look at it, long term. And 1852 rule is essentially 5 years broken down into days, 1852 days. And it's just 1852 tiny changes. And you don't actually have to write all those out, but it's like a roll of film. It's like the old movie projectors with the big roll of film on the top. There's a story in that, and there's a start, in the story, and there's an end. And if you look at each frame of the film, the hand, someone's moving just a little bit differently. And so you get people to break it down into these little changes and then explain to them that the sprocket holes in the film are very important, because without the sprocket holes, the film gets stuck in the projector gate. And you've seen that movie sort of effect where the film flares out or burns out because the film's stuck there. Well, that's what happens to us. But these little sprocket holes are self-discipline. And you've got to learn the process of self-discipline, because without self-discipline, you are never going to see, the journey. You're not going to see it through. So I get people to understand that and go, right, okay, I've accepted responsibility and I've got all these new ideas in my head and now I've got a plan, I'm shaping up. And then they get stuck. They just go round and around and around in a circle. And this is what I call the circle of intoxicating intention. And we've all been there. We all just go, yeah, we really want to make change. But this is the self-help circle where we go and take another course. We go to another seminar. Oh, there's just another book I can get, another year at university, and then I'll be right. And this is where it all turns into action. And this is where courage comes in. This is what I call the regret reward line. Because if you don't step over this line now, if you aren't willing to stand up for what you believe in, speak up for what doesn't ring true, and step up and start swinging into the ring, which all this takes courage, and you've got a mass of this courage inside of you, you can get over these. Once you get over this line, you start taking actions and you realize that people aren't going to cut you down every step of the way. Then you find your motivation. And people are desperate to find motivation, but just listen to the language they give. They always go, oh, if I just felt motivation, if I felt motivated, then you'd see what I can do. But I can't feel that. Well, motivation isn't a feeling. Motivation is an action. So once you start taking actions and you get little wins and little rewards, then that's when you start getting the first hints of motivation. And you know what motivation is? It's simply an anesthetic for hard work. So once you get the motivation coming in, you're willing, I'll take more steps. And out of that, then you get your confidence. because you get little rewards, small successes, you build up your confidence, and then you can go, I can see the opportunity, I can see it's really real now. And the last step you've got to be very careful of is your attitude, because how many people have we met who've just got it all together? They've got all, and it's all going in the right direction, but their attitude sucks. And this is something I learned from being an Army sniper, because if you look down a barrel of a rifle, you'll see what's called rifling. It's these lines, hard lines etched into the steel of the barrel, like a big spiral. And the purpose is to spin the bullet, because when a bullet exits a barrel, it's really unstable. And it stabilizes on its journey through the air as it spins. Because the bullet, if it's not spinning and it's not stable, its attitude goes up, its attitude goes down. It's literally wobbling up and down, but it's attitude up, attitude down. And if it's not stable when it hits a target and the attitude is wrong, it bounces off, doesn't it? And that's where ricochets happen. And so it's literally like you can go this whole journey and you can get to where you want to go, but if your attitude is wrong, the whole thing just falls in a great big heap. And we see this all the time with so many people. So, you can get all this process right, and you can get the motivation and the courage and the confidence. So you've got to check your attitude right at the end.
Fantastic. I just want to take you back to one little thing that I want to ask you about. Is you said that everyone's got a reservoir of courage inside them. Perhaps there are people like me who go, oh, really? Have I? Tell me about that. Why do you think that?
Well, because we've all got it. So look at my job is to encourage people. Now just look at the etymology of the word there, because we use this frivolously. When you say encourage someone, you go, come on, chin up, Paul, things will be better. Now, encourage is way bigger than that. En is to put onto, to make happen, to facilitate something. Encourage is a quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty. So when you encourage someone, what you're saying is, look, this is what I experienced through my life, and this is what I did to get over it. Here, you use this. See if it works for you. It's actually a relatively big and I think quite noble act. And we have all got this courage within us because we have all faced difficulty in some form. I'm a good action taker, Paul. But I would not say I am an emotionally courageous person. And I need help with that. And you may well be. You may be a person who's very strong emotionally. You could encourage me emotionally. We all have this reservoir of courage. But again, we're not called on to use it because we've slipped into the habit of outsourcing personal responsibility. We go, I don't have to. Someone said something I don't like. I'm not in a safe space. Make this a safe space for me. We don't have to use this courage. And courage is like a muscle. It's like most things here in a muscle. If you don't use them, they become weaker. But we have this courage that's there. So I would say, because this is what I think. I think we have this reservoir of courage in our heart that we don't use. I think we have this reservoir of an ability to learn in our head that we don't use. We just now think that we come out of school, we do our schooling, and that's it. Education's over for the rest of our life. And we have a smartphone in our pocket that we don't use. The power of the smartphone is just amazing. So when I worked in TV, this smartphone that I'm holding now, it has more power than a TV network about 15 years ago. It has more power than most radio networks. It has more information most universities have. We have it in our pocket, and what do? Make a few phone calls and play Candy Crush on it. It is an amazingly powerful tool. So with this courage in our heart, this ability to learn in our head, and a smartphone in our pocket, we can go a lot more. And these are the things, when I help people to navigate this coming fourth industrial revolution, these are the simple tools that I get people. And, it doesn't cost you anything. You've already got a smartphone. You've got a brain, and you've got some courage in your heart. We've just got to get them people using those. So that's one of the things I have is Footpath University. I get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I've done this for about 3 years now, and I go out onto Footpath University. I just go out for a walk for about an hour, and I listen to a podcast. And I do this maybe 300 out of the 365 days a year. So let's just say I've been doing that for 3 years. I've listened to 900 hours of some of the world's best teachers, most insightful people, And what strikes me is that it took me 25 years of really hard graft, carrying, like, being a cameraman. What people forget is that everywhere you go with about 20 cases of gear as well. Yeah. So it took me a few decades of carrying all these cases of gear to get access to these conversations with these amazing people around the world. And I carry this all in my pocket now. And it's just the self-education power of a smartphone, getting up at 5 a.m. Now, whether you get up at 5 a.m. is irrelevant, whether you listen on the bus, whether you do it when you do ironing, but if you can make a habit of turning off the TV for an hour and putting new ideas into your head, that is in working on the discipline muscle. So all these things come together, but they all take time. This is not going to happen in a 21-day course.
Julian, have you noticed a change in the younger generation? Does anyone in your world get a gold star?
Yeah, look, that's a vexed question, because I'm 57 now, so I temper everything through, am I just turning into my parents and saying it wasn't like that in my day? And when you look back historically, there's some, and start reading, some of the old texts about how kids were, you see things haven't changed that much. But certainly I think there is a move away from people willing to take chances, living a very protected lifestyle where, I really do think that we're moving into a nanny state. I don't think that helps. I think when you look at the rules and regulations and protections they have at kids who go through university nowadays, I don't think that opens free and frank discussion. The fact that people can't have conversation is one of our last tools we have to actually influence each other in and educate each other in a reasonable way, and we're taking that away. We're not even saying that we're allowed to have these conversations now. So, oh gosh, this is a roundabout way to answering your question.
Yep. No, that's cool. Talk to me a little about video, because you're talking about the smartphone in our hands. We've got this camera gear, we've got this publishing gear. And you're very strong on videos. In fact, you teach people. Video Smart is your course, or getvideosmart.com, I believe.
Yep. Video is very important. Video is going to be the language of the fourth industrial revolution. So we have all this change that is going to happen. So change is going to be a constant. And the language is going to be that of video. And when I say the language is that of video, it's the technology is going to be video. So we have all grown up being used to writing emails or making phone calls. Mm-hmm. There are more people in the world own a smartphone now than own a toothbrush. And I've checked that out. I've got, and that's hard. It's taken a bit of research, but I found some fantastic research on it. The probability of that being true is it's accurate enough. So the problem with smartphones is now that's how we like to access our information, because we're all, we're used to it. Stand there with a coffee in one hand, smartphone in the other. The problem with text, the method that we like to put information out there into the world by writing emails, because we can we can massage our content, we can massage our message before it goes out. The problem with text is we got these big fat fingers and the screens are too small for our big fat fingers. And for that simple physical reason alone, we are going to start to communicate with video. Because video is very easy for us to send a quick message and for people to receive a quick message. The problem with it is that people don't like to be on video for the same reasons they don't like to speak publicly. Is because video shines a big, fat, bright old spotlight on this gap of there's actually who we are in the world and who we present to be in the world. And there's a gap that we keep hidden. It's like an echidna, has a soft underside, and they curl up in a ball to keep that soft, underside. That's their vulnerability. It's the same as us with speaking. we don't like speaking, we don't like going on video because people see that we're actually not as good as we say we are. And, we're actually not as good looking as we present to be to the world. And so people just avoid it. But there is no avoiding that video is going to be the language. So I work with people now. I like to say I take them from shy to shine. So there are so many people who aren't using video who could be using video. And just to give you an example, the financial services industry, after the Banking Royal Commission that's going on at the moment, if there is one industry that could use video to help build trust with the community again, it's that industry there. Those people are going to need to get over their assumptions, and most of these are incorrect assumptions, and start getting on and using video. So, I mean, I love watching the penny drop. It's like, I call it the aha moment. When people have their aha moment, they realise, oh man, this is, all these things I've been talking about, I'm not as important as I was. There are reasons why I don't like how I look and sound on video, and you deconstruct. I love deconstructing all these false assumptions they have, and they go, right, there's nothing left but for me to do it. And then when they get into that act of service, okay, it's not about me. How can I help you? The last thing I do, I teach what I call the on-camera confidence code. And it's a process I go through. It's like a mental checklist I go through every time before I do a video. And the last thing I say is sawubona. And it's a Zulu word.
Excuse me? Would you say that word again, please?
Sawubona. Sawbona. And it's a Zulu word. And Zulus say it when they greet each other. And look, it might be other African tribes, but they say it when they greet each other. And what it means is, I see you as the whole person. I see you as a person, regardless of title, as someone worthy of speaking to, interacting, and trying to help. And it's the last thing I say in my head. I say something about it. So it's like literally saying, I'm getting myself out of the way. How can I be of service to you? Yeah, and it's brilliant. The last word I say. So it's the key word that I've divested myself out of this process. I'm just going to speak now, and you get better over time at it. But I don't really care about whether it's perfect or it's not perfect. I just get out there and in an act of service.
I've got to ask you then, how many takes do you do? Because your videos are supreme, I have to say. Okay,
well, it depends. So some of the ones I put online, if they're ones that are going to go on my website, they're going to be there for a longer period of time. So I want them to be a bit better. So, yeah, look, sometimes they're one take, sometimes they're 20 takes. I can't tell you. Sometimes everything goes wrong. Seriously, I scream like a banshee. I get so angry. It's like, but it depends. It just depends. But if it's a record, if I'm just doing webinars or helping something, it's just bang. Let's just go with it. Let's just make it real. But yeah, if they're for promotional purposes, yeah, I work on them a bit, but I don't get hung up on them.
My feeling is that video makes you vulnerable, like you were saying, but that vulnerability is actually a good thing. And we know that actually in sales and selling, there's more conversions with video. And the more you actually are yourself, the better it is, paradoxically.
Yeah, the world is absolutely screaming out for some truth and for some honesty. And you don't have to look further than the Americans voted in Donald Trump. I mean, you can say, this is just completely apolitical. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, and whether you just 100% agree with his views, and you might think he's the most brilliant person out there, I doubt very few people would say, I want my child to grow up to be like Donald Trump. Yet they voted him in. And because he speaks a language, he speaks what they perceive to be a truth as compared to your current generation of politicians who have come up through the system. So yes, don't be white bread. Don't look at everyone else and try to be like them. Just be yourself. This is what I've, when I used to do help a lot of people in the world of magic, and so many people came in, and magicians are are terrible at this. What they do is that they're really interesting people until you teach them magic tricks. And then they become cardboard cutouts. They try to do it like every other magician, and they lose all their personality. And I just go, man, you know, you are an original. You're out there searching for this persona, but you have it. Just take whatever you have and amp it up a bit. Just turn the volume up to 11. And then, you know, in day-to-day life, just turn it back down to 4 or 5.
Mate, this has been absolutely awesome. Fabulous stuff. Thank you so much. We're wrapping up now. So in wrapping up, I'm going to put 2 words together. The question really is there one thing you would like to say, one thing you would advise people? Is there a magic bullet?
No, not at all. No, I've just never believed that myself. I'm completely the opposite. I just say live a life of imperfect action. Everything I've ever done is imperfect action. I accept half of what I do is going to fail. I just accept that that's going to be the case. But I also understand that that's going to teach me new lessons. It's going to send me off on trajectories that I didn't even think were possible.
So you've been teaching someone, Julian, and having success with them, but 3 weeks later they might sort of not remember what you said. Is there some message that you give them to help them get through that block?
What I generally say to people is BYOA, and that's be your own authority. It goes back to that when I said, back in the Army sniper days, we had the mirror, and they said, if you've got problems, ask the man in the mirror. He'll get your problems sorted out. Most of the stumbling blocks people have, if they dig down and use that bit of courage that's inside of them, it's amazing how many problems that they can sort, between them, themselves. Many of the, when I had the online business, I had online courses. So, of course, people could go back and review information there. But if you were left to your own devices, always say that. Be your own authority. And you can go to the thousands of people who've come through my magic courses and ask them if they remember one thing. And they say, oh, gosh, he's not saying that again, is he? BYOA, be your own authority.
All right. Thank you so much, Julian Mather. Thanks, mate. It's been terrific and awesome talent. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Enjoyed it.